My name is Julia and I lived in China for 8.5 years, from 2006 to 2014. I went to China because I wanted to go somewhere which is very far and which has nothing to do with the world that I knew until then, which was Europe mainly. And because the language is also so different from our languages, and I really felt like I needed to learn something which is outside that, which is very different from that. So I went there and I did several different kinds of jobs for a few years while I learned some Chinese. And that's how eventually I got into working with Chinese rock bands. That was around the time that the D22 opened. The D22 was a live bar in Wudao in the student area of Beijing, and they opened in, if I'm not wrong, 2007. And that was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first live bars in Beijing that started to attract a crowd that likes live music and rock music, and especially it gave bands or burgeoning bands a stage and the opportunity to play live and to do their thing, do what they like, and move on from there. I've always been interested in rock music and music in general, anything that is underground or under the surface, and so it came naturally that when I moved to Beijing I started looking what is around. It never occurred to me, or it didn't until later, to actually turn this into a job, because this is not what people would call a job. I still wonder now if it still is a job or if it is a hobby or not, but now I live off it, so yeah, I guess it's a job. But it wasn't anything planned or that I aimed for. It just happened. Exactly, yes, because I saw these bands, I saw a lot of bands, just like many other people, and we thought they were incredibly fresh and alive and naive in a way. The music came from the inside and was hardly influenced by anything outside, or hardly, you know, at least less than what you would find in a band from here. And their music and their feelings and everything they said and did came from the inside, unfiltered out. And this is something that I have always liked a lot, or loved, about Chinese bands. I and many other people, and yes, you can probably see this for yourself in one of the shows in Berlin. It's something that I hear again and again from people who come to the shows that I organize, that these bands have a freshness and an honesty to them that you can hardly find in bands from here nowadays. Berlin has a great history in music, and is probably one of the few bigger cities in Europe that still has, or so I thought at that time, has an underground scene, rock scene, and art also in general. And I thought this fits with what I'm doing, with what I like, and with the kind of bands and artists from China that I work with. I think all Chinese musicians and artists, and even from other places, they want to come to Berlin and play here, or at least see it, because there's a sort of an aura around Berlin. For some reason they think that here it's the El Dorado of underground art, so they all want to come here, which I understand, it's a cool city, but I'm not sure that the underground scene is still what it used to be. I'm pretty sure it's not. It's actually a very difficult place to attract audiences, if you ask me. I book tours in all of Europe. Attracting an audience in Berlin is probably the hardest of all the cities, of all the stops on this tour, which probably again is because there is a bigger cultural offer in Berlin than there is somewhere else, so people have more of a choice, and they are a bit probably choosy. Yeah, they can choose, which is a good thing, really. But I wish they chose more often to come and see the shows from Chinese bands. The indie music scene in China, and especially in Beijing, is small. So if you have lived there and you have gotten to know some people there, you will have gotten to know other people who know other people who know other people. So for me it's like this: I know most of the bands or the artists that I work with. I knew them before already, And I go back there also regularly, so I see what's new or what has changed often. Some members of one band go and form another band, that happens quite often. And well, also now there is more of a focus, or the underground music or art scene, you can find it more in other cities than Beijing, like in Chengdu or Kunming or Wuhan, some would say. So what they have to have, these bands, for me, is that they have to be good live, because after all that's what they're going to do here. They're going to play live, and I want them to give a really good show and to give it all. And that's probably the main or the only requirement that they have to have. Here in Europe, and I think in every city that we go to, there's always some people who are very happy to see these bands and are very happy to see that there's someone doing this, bringing alternative Chinese culture to their cities, because they are very interested in that and seeing how China really is, if we can phrase it like that. What I also get sometimes, which makes me think, is like, oh, but they're good. Yeah, they're good. So still I think there is a bit of a difference between what people expect and what they see. In the end, I think the expectations of people here in Europe of what a Chinese rock band can do are quite low. I do not see this necessarily as such a bad thing. I think that they're just being honest. So yeah, but that's something I hear all the time. Oh, but they're good. Yeah, they are good. So in China, what they think about what I do, I think it's there's more and more bands that want to come to Europe to tour, because I don't know why. They want to come to Berlin for sure because of this myth or mystical aura that it has. They want to come to Europe also to get a better picture of what it is like to tour here, or what people are like, or what other musicians and other bands are like, which is a bit in turn also what the bands from here seem to be interested in about the bands from China. That is often an interesting thing to actually watch when it happens, because usually the support band of a concert is going to be a local band, so they get to mingle with a Chinese band who comes from very far away. It's sad that it just lasts for one evening, because it takes a while until people get used to each other and until they start talking, but I think most of the bands, or all the bands, they go back to China with new friends and new ideas and new inspirations as to what life can be. I would definitely like to invite you all to the concert in the Badehaus on the 23rd of May of Jiaozi, which is a post-rock band, but it's actually post-folk, because they use a guqin, a traditional string instrument, Chinese traditional string instrument, to play post-rock. So that is the main focus, which sounds a bit like classical music or traditional music, but in the background you will have the full post-rock big guitar riffs. It's a really good band that has existed for 20 years, and they're coming to Europe for the first time on tour. So it's definitely a not to miss thing.